the sitcoms. I don't know if you remember watching the comedies. And everyone acts greatly foolish. And that's considered like a very glorious thing, actually. Sometimes after watching some of these TV shows, you aspire to be the class clown, isn't it? That would not be ordinarily a very good thing. But after watching some of these TV shows, you aspire for it. I remember, unfortunately, I do remember one movie that I saw before I was a devotee. I think it was called Ocean's 11 or something like that. There was a movie, Ocean's 11, like that. It was about, I think it was about stealing. The movie was about stealing, right? About these thieves. And I remember watching that movie and thinking, wow, what a cool occupation. Because it was really cool. The master thief, I think I remember throughout the whole movie they show him doing like breakdancing, which was like really weird. And then toward the end of the movie, he wanted to steal one diamond. It wasn't the Satsanga Shevadir, but he wanted to steal one diamond. And it was in like a room like this big, and it had laser beams going all over the place. It was like, like thousands of laser beams. And the diamond was at the way into the hallway. So the movie shows him entering to the hall, and then like jumping and doing this the break dancing he was doing the whole movie was actually choreographed to the movement of the laser lights, so he would avoid the lights, and then he stole the diamond. That was like awesome. Jiva thinks like this. Oh, very cool, If you see a movie of someone chanting Hare Krishna, you're like, that movie was lame. But you see this movie, he's doing flips and stealing the diamond, and you're like, wow, I wish I could do that. Hey, you get contaminated by association, of course. Anyway, he ended up stealing this diamond or whatever it was, but the other team, they had already got to it first, and so they were more clever than him. So after watching the movie, one aspires to such things. Unfortunately, due to that's contamination. So similarly, so many things due to our mundane association we aspire for. Foolishness. So the general tendency is frivolity. So to get over that when we enter into spiritual life, or to take spiritual life seriously, it's quite a challenge for the conditioned soul, because he's accustomed to being frivolous. So it says, Lavamacha Sada saying, Prabhupada is quoting this verse. How much are we taking it to heart? How seriously are we taking it? Generally, a tendency of when you've been around for some time, oftentimes there's a tendency to think that we've been neglected. And sometimes certain classes of devotees will capitalize on this particular feeling of neophyte devotees, of their being neglected, in order to say that devotees aren't caring, and so on. Of course, it's not to say that there isn't negligence perhaps taking place, for sure. But a bona fide disciple will never think so much that my spiritual master has neglected me. Why is he doing this, and this for me? So, sometimes it is seen from certain sectors of devotional communities, ISKCON or otherwise, that they capitalize on this particular weak-heartedness of a neophyte devotee. Oh, I have been neglected. Why are they showing so much attention to me? But as I described the other verse the other day, bona fide disciple will not think, oh, why is spiritual master is not showing me so much attention? Spiritual master giving so many instructions already. How much have we taken it to heart? Of course, there's of course there needs to be training. So that point comes up. Well, I haven't been trained properly, and then the mind kind of sends you down that path that usually leads towards offenses, toward the spiritual master and so on. Why isn't he taking charge of me and looked after me for every single detail of my life? Maybe he's not actually the bona fide spiritual master. The mind tends to send us down the road that leads to a cliff of offenses on account of this particular sentiment, because it is a fact that we need to be trained and all that is also a reality. Whether or not that's the specific duty of the Diksha Guru, there are many discussions about those things. Because, but as far as the consciousness of real disciple, then even a single instruction is sufficient for him to perfect his life. As Srila Prabhupada is mentioning here, he mentions his own visit with Srila Bhakti Siddhanta, and how he got, from the first visit, his instruction, he took it to heart. and made it the mission, his life's mission for the rest of his life. So what is the consciousness of a bona fide disciple? Just like we are always harping on the necessity of having the bona fide guru in order to be delivered. But it is mentioned in the Shastras, I think particularly in the Mahabharata, that it is more difficult to find a bona fide disciple than it is to find a bona fide guru. Because a bona fide guru is a bona fide disciple first, isn't it? So we are always, the tendency of the conditioned mind and in all its self-absorption and ahankar is to see that, oh, I am being neglected, all attention isn't on me, etc. But how much is the question being asked if we are a bona fide disciple? That question should be posed to our mind if we are actually a bona fide disciple. It is more difficult to find a bona fide disciple than it is to find bona fide guru. In fact, both the bona fide disciple and the bona fide guru are denizens of the spiritual world. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta has told this point, that both the bona fide guru and the bona fide disciple are denizens of the spiritual world. In other words, they're not ordinary living entities. So just like we have Sat Guru, you have Sat Shishya also. Both are actually denizens of the spiritual world. He said, however, this relationship of guru-disciple can be practiced in the material world. Otherwise, religion would not be possible at all. But we should know that to be real disciple is an extraordinary thing. A real disciple, even by lava mantra, a moments of association, he can take it to heart and perfect his life fully from that particular instruction. At least the seed of perfection will be there. And he will take the necessary inspiration from his environment, from other Vaishnavas, in order to see to the blossoming of that seed, which was given to him by his spiritual master in the very beginning. So our business is to become bona fide disciples, not only in terms of dress, but also in terms of consciousness. So therefore, when we are reading about these great personalities and seeing their consciousness, it behooves us to understand that and try to apply that level of consciousness. Not so many expectations of the guru, what he should be doing for me, but rather what we should be doing for the guru. Because that ultimately is the consciousness of the spiritual world. The consciousness of the spiritual world is not, what has Krishna done for me lately? What has Srimati Radharani done for me lately? Everyone is always absorbed in what they can do for Krishna, and Krishna on purpose neglects, at least appears to neglect, the servant in the spiritual world. And he explains to the gopis why he does that also. The reason Krishna keeps himself hidden from our vision is for the purpose of studying the nature of our hearts. And we will venture to say also to give us a chance to study the nature of our own hearts as well. Because sometimes, due to the influence of the material energy, we live in a world of self-delusion, and we think ourselves to be very great. This is before coming to devotional service. And after coming to devotional service, we feel ourselves to be very great spiritualists, very sincere. You know, no one is as sincere as myself, at least none within my vision thus far. And oh, I'm very surrendered. There's a tendency, everyone kind of feels like that in the very beginning. And then after years and years of practice, one has to come face to face with the harsh reality of one's lack of sincerity, and etc. So Krishna, because there's a tendency to live in self-delusion, Krishna on purpose keeps himself hidden from the vision of even those who worship him, in order to give them the chance and also give himself the chance to study the nature of their hearts. Just like Krishna pulls the chariot of Arjuna in the middle. Arjuna is very enthusiastic at the beginning of the war. He's fired up. You know, Krishna pulled my chariot in the middle of the battlefield so I can see who has come to this great trial of arms. He's very enthusiastic. And Krishna is very clever, because enthusiasm is something, or at least false enthusiasm, utsahamai, is not something that we're unfamiliar with. So Krishna is very clever, because he doesn't want anything false going on, because it's not sustainable. So as we show our enthusiasm, Krishna is also very clever to bring out our genuine level of enthusiasm. We generally tend to think the bar is like way up here, and Krishna has how you say? like a guess, not a guess. What's the word I'm looking for? He has a guess that maybe, huh? Not ascertain. I'm looking for it. Anyway, a hunch. A hunch. He has a hunch that the enthusiasm may not be as much as the person is showing. So Krishna is very clever to figure out or to bring out what is the real level of enthusiasm. So Arjuna is fired up. So Krishna pulled my chariot and sit on the battlefield, and Krishna pulls it right in front of Jonah and Bhishma, which was Arjuna's two greatest attachments. Krishna was very clever like that. And then immediately he became completely dejected, unenthusiastic, and so on. Krishna said, see, I knew it. And then he has to hear transcendental knowledge to actually bring about the spiritual level of enthusiasm in Arjuna. So also we, bringing our self-delusions of grandeur from the material world into our spiritual practice, Krishna is very clever in order to bring out the real thing. And, in other words, help us to authenticate where we're actually standing and progress from there. So he keeps himself hidden on purpose for that reason. And we could venture to expand the idea a bit further to even the spiritual master. Of course, the spiritual master never willfully or purposely neglects his disciple as such, but Krishna may be giving that inspiration to the guru for a particular reason, to bring out the real mentality of the disciple, if he is not really a disciple. Generally, you'll not find many disciples in the material world. There's hardly even a few. Mostly what one will see in the material world is Shishya Praya, like Vaishnava Praya. Vaishnava Praya means almost Vaishnava, or a semblance of a Vaishnava. So what you have also is Shishya Praya means a semblance of a Shishya, or almost a Shishya, but not actually a disciple. As soon as the spiritual master so gives some chastisement, as soon as the spiritual master doesn't answer a few mails, then immediately the disciple who was so much glorifying is ready to crucify the guru. It is seen time and again. It is seen again and again and again and again within our institution and otherwise. When a person is glorified so much, then they shall see some fault in their spiritual master. They never think it is maybe their own fault, or perhaps they find something that is there that is not proper, that can go in also. And then they're ready to crucify, showing their own lack of spiritual sincerity in many cases. Because even if one comes in contact, suppose you don't have the bona fide guru, sometimes that may happen, or the guru falls down due to the circumstances of existence and so on, or there's some complications there like that. Then someone gives up his Krishna consciousness on account of that. That is seen many times. So that is evidence, not a very sincere person. Because why should such an incident unblock you from achieving Krishna? Okay, so there was a pothole in the road, but you drove right into it, and the wheel got damaged a little bit. So why don't you fix the wheel and continue on the trip toward the kingdom of God? But no, stopping the trip altogether. In this way, there are various circumstances in life that bring out the reality of the situation that we are not really disciples of. And that we are trying to become disciples. If we are really disciples, then as Prabhupada has indicated here in the purport, by giving his own example, citing his own example, spiritual master gives one instruction, love a mantra, and one takes it to heart in that moment's association, and all the perfection is available for that individual. As far as further enlightenment comes by the grace of Krishna and the association of Vaishnavas. What is that? Tesham satatam yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddha yogam tam yanamam puyantite. Krishna helps out, and generally by sending the association of other Vaishnavas who can help to further the blossoming of the creeper. So, this is the result if one associates sincerely, becomes really disciple, or really a servant of the servant. Bhagavat ashrita ashrita anubhava. The consequence of taking shelter of one who is taking shelter of a bona fide spiritual master is one, visasarja, he becomes completely free from the bodily concept of life, which causes his degradation in the material world, and he eventually attains all spiritual perfection. So it's just a matter of really, as you may have figured out by now, spiritual life really has everything to do with us in a lot of ways. And not so much what's going on with others, per se. Of course, devotional service is not done in a vacuum as such, but it's really about what we want to do and how we want to respond to the mercy that Krishna makes available to us, however big or small it may appear to us at the time. So we have a great opportunity to become real disciples by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. So we should do so and perfect our human form of life. So does anyone want to add to this discussion? Anything? Okay.
I have 2 questions. My first question is, in Nectar of Instruction, verse 6, Srila Prabhupada says one must accept an Uttama Adhikari as his guru. So in this discussion, you presented how generally the disciple is expecting so much from the spiritual master without really thinking of what he has contributed. So could you explain what's a healthy balance of one, what one should be ready to give from one side and what one should be expecting from the spiritual master? That's the first question. And my second question is, sometimes like mental conditioning is almost like a physical handicap, like someone born with a bad leg. Similarly, sometimes you have people who are just, due to some childhood trauma or something, they're very insecure. And so no matter how much is done for them, they always feel insecure. So in those situations, it becomes very hard to think, like you were explaining, so much has been done for me. Instead of thinking that, they always, because of that insecurity, which is almost like a handicap, they can't overcome it. So what can such a person do? Those are my 2 questions.
Well, okay, first question, when you go to a math teacher, what do you expect to get from a math teacher? Math. Do you expect him to ask you, how was your day yesterday? What's going on with you emotionally? Do you expect all those things from a math teacher? No, you expect to learn math from a math teacher, right? When you go to the gas station, in India, they actually have people who pump the gas for you. They do so much in America. But what do you expect from the gas pump guy at the gas station? Okay, and of course, when you go to the doctor, if you go to a nutritionist, what do you expect to hear from? You expect to hear about surgery of the brain, or you expect to hear about nutrition? So when you're going to a particular, so we should know. So then, what is the duty of the spiritual master? Is to give spiritual instruction. He's to deliver the message of Krishna to us because we can't understand what Krishna is saying, generally, even if we read it directly. So if the spiritual master basically tells us to chant Hare Krishna, follow 4 regular principles, read all the books, and then if you have questions about them, if I'm not available, then you ask senior Vaishnavas around you. Then he's basically fulfilled his duties as a spiritual master, essentially. For the spiritual master to get into the details of the emotional content of the conditioned souls, that's extra mercy, you can say. That is not necessarily essential for the spiritual master to do. It is, if he wants to make all arrangements for your material existence and, what job you should get and all these things, you may have questions about those things. And he may or may not decide to give direction on those particular elements of your life. That need not be considered essential. If he tells you to chant Hare Krishna and to follow the 4 regular principles, read the literatures and try to apply them. Where there's doubts, then you ask me, either directly through mail or something like that, about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. I noticed many times that a lot of the questions aren't about the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. It's about this one did that to me, this one is doing this to me, I'm feeling bad about this. That's not Jignasu Shreya Uttamam. Of course, it may be a beginning, but real spiritual life means Jignasu Shreya Uttamam. Questions about the goal of life. But we hardly hear such questions anymore because of our absorption in the body concept of life. So therefore, no matter how much the spiritual master gives us, it will never be enough because we aren't letting go of our attachment to the body concept. So we never feel sufficient. It's just like sometimes when you're having a problem and the spiritual master gives an answer just here in chant, we find it very dissatisfying. Even though we hear from the Bhagavatam, that is a solution to the whole problem of material existence. But the spiritual master says, just try to increase your hearing and chanting. We find it to be very impractical and I'm not able to focus because I'm just so mad with this person and so on. That may be there, and that is something that one has to learn to tolerate, as Krishna says, and make progress. Now, the spiritual master may or may not give some type of direction that can help you get over the mental blocks that are making it difficult for you to hear and chant and all those things. But the fact of the matter is, if we shall remain attached to it and don't decide to let go of it, then it continues. And then again, the same question coming out of the spiritual master. No one's asking about the truths of the holy name, the truths of, rasa, the truths of prema, the truths about all the things that Mahaprabhu says is Krishna consciousness. And Chaitanya Charitamrita, chapter 25, Mahaprabhu says, Krishna Tattva, Bhava Tattva, Prema Tattva, Sara, Rasa Tattva. Like this, he gives a whole list of tattva. He said, this is Krishna consciousness. Tattva Jignasa, inquiring into all these things. But we have no questions about those things, nor do we have time to investigate any of these topics to get questions about those things. So we end up inquiring about the body and mind. That will never be, then we'll get answers for it, it won't be enough. Because the mind is like a black hole. Whatever you tell it, it just sucks it up, and then again, it is never sufficient. So then, the point is, what should we expect from the spiritual master? If he tells us to chant the holy name without offense, how many of us are doing it, to be real? It's like a lot of things that we could be trying to apply in a deeper way that we're not, and we know we're not. Chanting the holy name without offense, reading the Shastras carefully, trying to understand them, apply them, and like I've already mentioned. Then are we doing like that? I had one friend, a very nice guy, Indian kid, and he would always, every time he would see the spiritual master, Gurudev, give me instruction. And so he would get an instruction, and it usually was very general. He would ask my Guru Maharaj, he would ask like that. So Maharaj would give some, and then again he would go, next time he said, Gurudev, please give me your mercy, give an instruction. And he was going on and on like this. So once I said, Prabhu, you're not applying anything, because I was knowing about his life, what he was doing. I was like, you're not applying a single thing. What is the use in collecting instructions like this? Like going shopping or something. Why don't you apply one thing first and see the result of that and grow from there. As far as the insecurities are concerned due to the mental handicaps or whatever, those are just anarthas. One can overcome them by absorption in bhajan kriya, the regulative principles of devotional service, beginning with chanting of the holy name of the Lord. What else can be said? In the meantime, one has to tolerate one's anarthas. Of course, we seek the association of devotees in order to help overcome the influence of those handicaps. But the association of devotees primarily means reminding one another about Krishna. Smarata smarayantascha mito aghoga haram haram bhaktya sanjataya bhakti. This is again another verse from the 11th canto. 11th canto is filled with nectar verses. This verse says, Smaranta smarayantascha. The devotees are remembering Krishna themselves. Smarayantascha, and they're reminding each other of Krishna also. And as a result of this type of exchange between the devotees, mita means like this mutual transaction of remembering Krishna and reminding others of Krishna. Then Krishna, aga ogha haram haram, he removes everything inauspicious from those devotees' lives. That's a very nice word. And in this way, bhaktya sanjataya, bhaktya by devotion gained by devotion, that means by pure devotion, prema gained by sadhana bhakti. Then the devotees begin to exhibit ecstatic symptoms like hair standing on end, etc. So this is what it means to associate with devotees, really reminding one another about Krishna and not about the various anarthas and so on. And to be real, it's not so easy to practice because of the body concept of life. We don't practice it actually in many cases, so we can try and see how Krishna removes the inauspicious things from our life. And in the second chapter of the 10th canto, the demigods are praying that the devotees are so absorbed in hearing chanting that they don't even notice material existence passing by them. You know, it means that's the goal that we're trying to reach, that you don't even notice the material existence is passing by. Except for when you have to occasionally go out and preach something. So then you might have to become a little bit aware of, okay, what's going on in the material world, CNN, let me check out a few topics here for presenting to the... But generally, devotees, they're so absorbed, they don't even notice the material world. And that way, they just go back home, back to Godhead, not even noticing that the material existence has dropped away. They just go back, oh, I'm here now in the spiritual world, enjoying the same kata that I was enjoying before. And then so what to do with the handicaps in Tamcha Tikra Subharata and associate with devotees and try to overcome the influence of anarthas. That's our process, Krishna consciousness. Okay, so Parama Karuna Sam first, then you can go.
Prabhu, you told that lava matra association can bring success in our life. So how it comes? It by the mercy flowing directly from eyes to eyes, or by taking the instruction from spiritual master?
Generally by taking the instruction. Many of us are not so qualified that just the spiritual master looks upon us and, boom, prema, or something. That would be good. That would be cool.
So suppose we are not qualified, but the spiritual master thinks that, okay, I want to give him mercy. So he looks in that way. Is it possible?
Then what happens is we usually start speculating about what that look means. And we commit offense. Why are you looking at me like that? Or suppose he's smiling at you and you go the opposite direction. You think, he thinks I'm the most exalted personality, or this has happened so many times that we've seen that the spiritual master, someone says, so-and-so is my spiritual master. And you say, well, how do you know? What is in it? Well, he smiled at me. Prabhu, he smiled at everyone. How did you? But when he smiled at me, it was very special. And I was like, oh, you got prema? Well, no. Well, how do you know you got the special glance and others didn't get the special glance, Like that. So either way, the speculation starts to take place. Therefore, instead of speculating, better to hear. Shute kshita nanupato nanata pumsam. Bhagavatam says, seeing through the ears. Our process is to see through the ears, not to see through the eyes, because the eyes are very deceptive. In fact, we were just talking last night, Mukunda, and I think you? If the voice goes, it is a very depressing thing, because our voices are everything in Krishna consciousness, because that's the main tool for glorifying Krishna. What is that verse? Atashi Krishna namadi namavet grahyam indriyai? Sevan mukhe hiji huado. Service beginning with the tongue, and you lose your tongue. You lost everything in this Krishna consciousness movement if your voice goes and you can't speak, can't chant. And similarly, if you lose your ears, finished. Ears is like the ears and tongue, these are our main weapons for battling Maya. So if these weapons go, you weaponless. You're going out on the battlefield with no weapons, you're finished. But if the eyes go, that is very good. Of course, you say, well, I can see the form of Krishna, but we hardly spend much time seeing the form of Krishna. And we see so many other things in this material world that gets us into trouble. Actually, it's mentioned in 11th canto also, how the eyes is generally the beginning of our degradation. The eyes generally, that's what begins the whole thing, You go outside, you see something, ooh, and then the contemplation comes, finish. So Bilva Mangalar Thakur, therefore he said, these eyes give me trouble. We're not recommended to practice that element. But this is the extreme version of pratikul, unfavorable to devotional service. So he just plucked out his eyes. Please don't practice that, So we're recommended to see through the ears and not through the eyes like that. So therefore, rather than seeing the spiritual master and speculating, you should rather inquire from him. And if the directions are very broad, then you should seek clarification, or else you should seek help from senior Vaishnavas also, who are seeing your personality and so on. You have to take help from all corners you get. Another problem we have in our movement, I feel, on a personal level, is our understanding of the guru is very limited. Guru just means just Diksha Guru, and that too, the embodiment of the Diksha Guru. We don't have the understanding of the Guru Tattva in its more pervasive feature. where the guru can manifest practically anytime, anywhere, and he may not always have the form in which you're normally relating to, which you call your Diksha Guru. But the guru, because the guru is actually Krishna. So Krishna can manifest himself in any living entity, practically speaking, but particularly Vaishnavas, of course, to instruct us about how to achieve the goal of our life. Unfortunately, due to small-mindedness and being neophyte, we say, no, only this embodiment is guru and no one else is guru. And that way we deprive ourselves of Krishna's guidance from all angles. So sometimes you get an instruction from Krishna through your Diksha Guru, that embodiment of Guru. And then you may not be able to seek clarification from him as such. So Krishna manifests as another Guru in your life. But you don't see him as Guru because you say, only this is Guru and no one else is Guru. You don't see the Shiksha Guru, you don't see the Shravanam Guru. There are many types of Gurus there. And nor can you understand the Chaitya Guru in the heart, Super Soul. So in this way we put ourselves in great complication. But of course, as we surrender more, we will be able to catch up Krishna's indications and clarifications in all the various forms that he tends to manifest himself for our edification. So try to see through the ears and not through the eyes. Eyes are very deceptive.
Thank you. With the purport of the translation is mentioning that one who takes shelter of the servant very easily gets free from bodily concept. So I'm wondering, in our system, if you could just comment on the necessity to be very transparent in being the servant of the servant, because we're talking about, of course, being surrendered to the pure devotee, but last text and this text also mentioning just by becoming dear to the servant of the servant. So sometimes the hesitancy can be, okay, I have the spiritual master and, you know, I take full shelter of him, but the authority system and my authorities I'm not so much surrendered to. So what's the necessity for full surrender also to the servant of the servant, or the immediate authority, as far as bringing about the highest perfection?
Well, the first question that comes up is that immediate authority surrendered to the spiritual master or the system? That would be the first question that a person will, and you can't force a person to believe that it's necessarily the case. They have to be able to see it for themselves and place faith in them. We can try to inspire faith as such, but they have to be able to see it for themselves. So the authority system has to, for example, so then Srila Prabhupada and then the servant of Srila Prabhupada are spiritual master. And then the authority system like the GBC or like the management system of a particular temple and so on. So are we to surrender to that? Yes. But then that would depend on our confidence in their spiritual position. It's not that we're necessarily to just believe that they're on that platform per se. In other words, it depends on the own person's faith. That cannot be forced. In terms of managerial structure and management, then one must follow that system. Otherwise, it's just anarchy, it's insanity. And so here's the managerial system that has come down, it's been given by Prabhupada. One must adhere to that. You know, otherwise it's just anarchy. I have this opinion, someone else has that opinion, and so on. But as far as a spiritual authority is concerned, this is my understanding, and I also have heard from senior devotees the same thing. Not all senior devotees, but from senior devotees that inspired me, I've heard this point. No one can force you to surrender to another person as a spiritual authority. That is your own prerogative. Where you choose to place faith is a prerogative of the jiva. No one can force you or manipulate you into thinking that you're a true follower of Prabhupada if you place faith in these persons as your spiritual authority. That individual has to himself be convinced of that truth for himself. You can do your best to say that they are certainly bona fide and yada, yada, yada. And they may also certainly be bona fide, etc. But then that's for the individual practitioner to conclude for himself. As far as the management system is concerned, he must follow. Otherwise, it's anarchy. You know, everyone's going to put their opinion forward, and then you have an unmanageable situation. But as far as his spiritual life is concerned, that is his own prerogative. Spiritual life is an individual affair, and it is not an institutional affair. We are working together because a bundle of sticks together gives greater support than one by itself. But we have to also know that the institution is composed of individuals. It's not just like one homogeneous blob. or Hare Krishna clones. We're all individuals. And Krishna responds to us individually. It's not like, oh, I joined ISKCON, therefore I'm going back to Godhead. He wants to see the individual consciousness, the individual endeavor to capture his heart through the process of devotional services given by our Guru Parampara. So this is my understanding. I'm pretty convinced about it solidly. And on a personal level, as far as my personal practice is concerned, I'm very submissive to the managerial structure in terms of the management of ISKCON and so on, etc. But as far as what may be presented as the spiritual conclusions and so on, I don't always accept that or agree, nor do I feel I have to, because other senior devotees who are also dedicated to Prabhupada's movement don't always agree. There's always discussion. I haven't seen so far that there's generally a complete consensus on everything. So where I have faith, and certain conclusions in spiritual authority, I put my faith there. Although I'm always respectful and follow always the general guidance given for our institution in terms of its progress. I will never question that. Even if I disagree with things, I will never challenge that in an open arena. But as far as my understanding of spiritual is concerned, then it is my prerogative, because it's my spiritual life. And even if I'm going down the wrong road, that's still my prerogative. Even if someone wants to send himself to hell on account of his foolishness, that's still an individual. You can only try to convince him that it's not a good idea, but it's still up to him what he wants to do with his spiritual life. So we should never be convinced, we should never be convinced that we're not true followers of Srila Prabhupada if we don't adhere to all the spiritual ideas that may be propagated by a particular authority system. Rather, because that is a matter of your own personal faith. One may have faith that Srila Prabhupada actually meant like this, as other senior devotees are telling, and some have like this, as other senior devotees are telling. It creates great confusion, in fact, when so many authorities don't have consensus. So finally a person puts his faith where his heart is. And that is natural, and that is fair. And that's my general understanding of there may be I may get chastised for this particular point. But I'm ready to deal with that as such, because this is not my opinion as such. I've heard this actually from many senior devotees. I'm not mentioning their names here, but many that I had attraction to and faith in. So that's my understanding of that particular truth. Hare Krishna. You want to say something?
Thank you so much, Prabhuji, for your class. I mean, you started with, like, we always have a drift from consciousness because we don't take things seriously. And then from the bona fide disciple, you make a very strong point now here. Like, a spiritual life is one's own prerogative. So, I'm a processed person of Kali Yuga, though I seem like I have made choices. But those choices were already there. And it was easy for me to make those choices.
Sure.
And now the spiritual life is my own prerogative, and it seems very difficult when I have to make some choices which are going to affect me as a spiritual, my endeavors, which I seem like spiritual. So what are my duties, how I should do this? This is first part. The second part, my understanding was there is always a mercy. The case of, a quick analogy that comes to my mind is like Durvasa Muni was running from, Sudarshan Chakra. So one may seem like, a Sudarshan Chakra who protected Parikshit Maharaj right there. That was divine, How a person can run away. We are each one of us represent Durvasa Muni to a certain extent. And we are being protected by the devotees Ambrish Maharaj, because he was praying for his protection. That's why he is being protected by the Sudarshan Chakra. Otherwise, he was finished. So how I can process things in one way we see we are being protected by the prayers of devotees. And on the other side, this also makes real sense, spiritual life is one's own prerogative, its own self-study, He need to live a life of a bona fide disciple to take anything out of it.
Oh yeah, I mean, if I understood your question properly, when you ask questions, it's not very easy to understand what you're asking. Sorry. If I missed the point, please forgive me, because usually I end up in great confusion after. But if I understood it properly, then we learn from the Jasoda Damodar Leela that spiritual life is a combination of both mercy and endeavor. On the one hand, Jasoda Mai was trying to bind Krishna, but Krishna's powers, Vibhuti Shakti, was not allowing her to do so. So although she got so much of rope, it was stretching for miles and miles and miles and miles and miles, and it still ended up being the width of 2 fingers too short. And her Gopi friends, they were telling her, just give it up, you'll not be able to do it. But she was so determined to bind Krishna. The term used by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is Bhakta Nishta. She was so absorbed in her service of chastising Krishna that she didn't give up. And so by her Bhakta Nishta, her great endeavor, then Krishna's Kripa Shakti, which is considered the king of all his potencies, manifested itself from his Swarup. And just as when the king comes into the room, everyone offers their obeisances. So when the king of Krishna's potencies, Kripa, came to manifest in his Swarup, all his other potencies bow down. And then by that combination of her Bhakti Nishta, her determination, and Krishna's Kripa potency, then she was able to bind Krishna. So in short, when we say spiritual life is our own prerogative, we speak of the Bhakti Nishta side of the endeavor to attain Krishna consciousness. But in the ultimate reality, only by Krishna's mercy will our determination have any meaning whatsoever. By the prayers, if we can be very determined, but without the prayers of devotees, without their protection, their inestimable guidance and so on, then our endeavors are certainly fruitless. Although we may live in a world of delusion, because sometimes it happens if you work, you do hardcore anything, and then the tendency is to think, I have done it, but you don't have mercy of the devotees in truth, so then it'll be a fruitless affair, no doubt. So it's always a combination of both. That's what we learn from that pastime, which we are to meditate on for a whole month, in the month of Kartik. That idea is there. So spiritual life is our prerogative. It is up to us what we want to do with mercy when it comes in response to our determination. Like Krishna gives mercy to Arjuna by speaking Bhagavad Gita, now it's up to him. All right, Arjuna, what are you going to do? Has your illusion been dispelled? He asked the question, your illusion now dispelled, Arjuna? Yes, my illusion is now dispelled. Well, what is the proof that your illusion is now dispelled? What is that? Yes. What is the Sanskrit? Karishe vachanam tava. As you say, I will do that. When you say, Krishna will ask, is your illusion now dispelled? Yes, Krishna, my illusion is now dispelled. Now what will you do? I will go to the forest. You're not surrendered. Krishna said, my illusion is dispelled, so now as you like, I will do that. So Krishna gave mercy, then he had to take it up now, what he wants. Like that. I like some understanding. I don't know if that answers your question or not. It's like, I repeat this point again and again, but I don't have other things in our scenario. Okay, so it's 8:27, it's the last, okay, Mataji, Shri.
I have a question about Krishna knowing our heart. You had given the example of Arjuna and how Krishna was watching his actions to know his heart. My question is, I thought through Paramatma, he knows our heart. So
Sure.
I'm confused.
I was being partially playful. And we shouldn't, of course, allow the understanding of Krishna's opulence to block our appreciation of the sweetness of Krishna directly. Krishna, of course, knows everything through the Paramatma, and that's kind of cool. But it's more sweet when we hear how Krishna is taking personal interest, as if he has to figure things out. Just like we hear in the Agasura Leela, when Krishna killed the big snake was there. The big snake in the Krishna book. So all the cowherd boys, when they saw the snake, some of them speculated it's a big mountain. Some of them speculated, say, I don't think it's a snake, actually. I was reading the commentary, you know. I think it's actually a snake. You know, that heat coming from that cave is a little bit too hot. So then one cowboy said, even if it is a snake, Krishna is there, he'll save us. Don't worry, let's go and play. All right, and then everyone went to go play. And then when Krishna was seen from a distance, it's described how his Yogamaya potency covered him, and he got confused, bewildered. The word is used, bewildered. What should I do to help my friends? It's like, Krishna, you're God. How can you be bewildered at any point? But because it augments the sweetness of the leelas, which attracts our heart. You know, it's one thing to know if someone, he just knows your mind because he's all-knowing. That's kind of cool. But it's more sweet that someone comes up to you, takes personal interest. What's going on in your mind? Tell me what's going on. So in that way, we shouldn't allow the understanding of the truth of Krishna, as Krishna Tattva, the truth of Krishna, to block our appreciation of the rasa aspects of Krishna's passion, or the sweetness. How Krishna, just like Krishna is God, why is he driving the chariot of Arjuna? God doesn't drive the chariot of any person. Someone was driving his chariot. But when Krishna presents himself both in the Bhagavad Gita and in the Bhagavatam, when he introduces himself, when Krishna actually first appears in the Gita and in the Bhagavatam, he appears as the chariot driver of Arjuna. So he prefers to be known and remembered in this way. Another place in the first canto of Bhagavatam, which is always very sweet, Krishna made a vow not to fight in a war, which he had to break a few times. And one of the times he had to break it is when Ashwatthama sent a weapon to kill all the Pandavas. I think this was after he had killed all the sons. Yeah, this is after he had killed all the sons of Draupadi. Another time, Ashwatthama was always getting himself into trouble. So he threw another Brahmastra weapon to kill all the Pandavas, and they didn't have enough time to counteract this, so they were basically finished. So Krishna, the war wasn't quite over yet, but Krishna just took his chakra and blocked it, you know? Even though he agreed not to fight in the war. Again, he did it again. And Prabhupada comments in the purport very sweetly that Krishna is known as Bhakta Vatsala, one who is always the protector of his devotees. Vatsa means calf. So just like a mother cow will be always very protective of the calf, so Krishna is always very protective of his devotees. So it was more important for Krishna, Prabhupada comments, to be remembered as the protector of his devotees, Bhakta Vatsala, rather than a strict moralist who never breaks his solemn vow. And I remember when I read that, I thought that was quite beautiful and attractive. That was more important for Krishna, to be remembered in this way. Even though that, of course, for those who are non-devotees, they'd like to criticize Krishna for not being a strict moralist, but he doesn't mind that. Why am I breaking my vow? As a protector of my devotees. So like that. I hope that clears up the kind. So I was just being a little playful there when I say Krishna had a hunch and like that. Okay, so I say 31 now. So we'll end here. Srila Prabhupada ki Jai.